Hey guys, what's up? This is your boy, and I'm back with another What If. This is a new series that I'm starting, and obviously you can tell by the title and thumbnail that this is What If Deku Was in a Quirk Marriage. Now, I know this may seem kind of weird, and by the thumbnail you can probably guess that it is a female Todoroki x Izuku ship, and you might think, well, that's kind of weird, why would you make Todoroki a girl? Because you know Endeavor is the only character in frickin' My Hero Academia that would want a quirk marriage. Like, we've never seen any other people, probably not Ida's family, no, definitely not Ida's family, probably not Momo's family. Like, none of these families are gonna want a quirk marriage except for Endeavor. And you'll find out why he actually accepts this as we get into it. So, without further ado, as I said, let's hop straight into it. So, Inko and Hisashi would actually be there for the first 5 years of Izuku's life. And so Inko would have a water manipulation quirk, unlike her regular quirk, which is attracting small objects. Now, it's not that powerful, just as Todoroki's mom's Rei's ice quirk wasn't all that powerful, but when it was given to Izuku, when he has a part water quirk, so it's like Koda's, but not only can he produce the water, but he can manipulate it, so kind of like how Todoroki can do with his ice, or in this canon, her ice. And Hisashi would actually be sort of like a Todoroki situation, having two quirks, which is earth manipulation and wind manipulation. And Izuku, when he is 5 years old, Hisashi, and Inko would learn that he actually has all three quirks. Hisashi's parents obviously had a wind manipulation quirk and a earth manipulation quirk. They just happened by coincidence to end up together, and Inko she had a completely different quirk from her parents for some reason. But that just happens in the My Hero Academia universe, as we can see clearly with Bakugo's quirk. But Izuku would actually gain all three of these abilities, and the water manipulation and creation would be much better, as well as the earth manipulation. He cannot create earth, which is the bad part, but he can create the gusts of wind. So Hisashi's actually requires, like, you have wind around you, or you have, like, earth around you, while Inko you can just create water using her quirk. So hers is more like Todoroki's quirk, or Todoroki's and Endeavor's, where she can create the water and manipulate it, while Hisashi is more kind of like earthbending and airbending. But, you know, air is everywhere, and earth is mostly everywhere. Izuku can also use, like, cement and stuff like that, or chunks of buildings. Heck, he could no, not metal, he can't use anything metal, but he can use, like, pieces of the street, like the gravel. He can just basically use anything that would be technically considered earth, or a rock of some kind, or anything like that. So you might be wondering, why in the world would Inko and Hisashi want this for their son? Well, this idea is brought to their attention when Endeavor, obviously his daughter, has a really powerful quirk, and he realizes that, wow, he finds Hisashi's family, and Hisashi's family, obviously, Hisashi was powerful enough on his own, but then his son, it turns out, has not only his two quirks, but also his wife's quirk, and all three of those are, like, multiplied by, like, 20 in power, so it's basically kind of like a Todoroki situation, only Todoroki, I think's power was, like, times 10 Endeavors, and times 10 Rei's, maybe, like, times 5 Endeavors and times 10 Rei's. But let's just say for this, Izuku is just freaking times 20 in all three of his element controlling. And so the Midoriya family has actually is very struck for money right now. They are very low on money. Hisashi just lost his job and is trying to find a new one, but he's struggling. They're running out of money fast because of basic needs, essentials, and all that good stuff. And because of this, a lot of things are starting to fall apart. And their family relationships are starting to quiver. So What they decide is that they need to find some way to make money, so they buy a couple of lottery tickets, not expecting to win, but just praying that they will. So Endeavor is like, he comes up to Hisashi one day when Hisashi's looking for a job. Obviously, Endeavor would just be on duty that day, and he would talk to Hisashi about this, about a quirk marriage between the two kids. Obviously, not until they're at least a little bit older. And so what would happen is Endeavor would propose that he would bring a dowry, and he would pay Izuku's family a handsome sum, and as long as the two continued to stay married, he would continually fund their family. Even if Hisashi did, even if something happened to Hisashi or something happened to Inko, if something happened to both of them, he would continually give Izuku money, and if something did happen to both of them, he would gladly accept him in the Todoroki residence. Because obviously they're stricken for money, and Hisashi would say, hey, that's not a bad deal. After all, you are the number 2 hero. And Hisashi would accept, and because of this, Endeavor's plans would actually change. So instead of being going to be really harsh on Todoroki and his wife and children, he, over like the next, around the next year or so, he would actually realize what he was doing and realize that, alright, if the power difference between Izuku and his parents and Shota, I'm going to change Todoroki's name to, first name to Shota, because that's more feminine than Shoto. Not saying that a girl in Japan might have the name Shoto. I don't know. I don't know about Japanese names. It just sounds more feminine if it's Shota. But, Endeavor would actually be a little more relaxed, seeing as if the power difference between, obviously, Izuku and his parents and Shota and her parents shows anything based off how powerful their kids would be, especially if the kid gained all 5 elemental control, like control of both of fire, ice, earth, wind, and water, and then the power multiplier was anything to go off of. Yeah, Endeavor's like, you know what, I'm just gonna wait until I have grandchildren, and then I'm gonna laugh in All Might's face as soon as the goddamn thing gets its quirk, because it's gonna be about as strong as All Might as soon as it gets the damn thing. And so he actually would kind of like realize, in a sense, quote unquote, what he was doing, and the first thing he would do is, after Hisashi accepts, he would be thinking about this. And after 2 months, he would walk into a room where his wife is. Obviously, his wife hasn't been sent in the mental institute yet. I don't know exactly at what age she poured the hot water on Shota or Shota, but I think it would still happen, just because that scar is fucking sick. But Endeavor, although he would be horrible, he would, before his wife is sent away, he would walk up to her and he would hug her, and all of his children would give him weird looks. Obviously, Toya's gone at this point. Toya's just an adult now, so he's just gone. He's nowhere to be found. Or, I don't know exactly how old Toya is at this point, but I think he'd just be gone at this point, since he is the oldest child. But the other 2 children, they would just stand there, Natsuki, and I can't remember the other one, but they would just stare, and so would Shota, with disbelief, and he would just say that he was sorry, and that he knows he can't right all the wrongs of his past, but that he'll try his best to try and basically make their family an actual family, and not just something that he wants to surpass All Might with. And he would actually postpone her going to the mental institute, and they would bond as a family. And since, the kids are months younger, they have gone through abuse, but not as much abuse as they would have. And Endeavor actually gets a pretty smooth redemption arc, although in the middle of his redemption, Inko would actually be talking with Hisashi, and Hizashi would basically convince her that, yeah, sure, this may seem like a bad thing, but it's actually not. It would be really good for our kids, and it's a great deal for us. And if we were ever to be gone, Izuku would just have a place at the Todoroki house. And that's the number 2 hero's house, like, so he's gonna be living the life. So Inko, although she doesn't really want to decide her son's fate for him, she eventually obliges, and she would tell Izuku that he's going to meet someone that's going to be special in his life. And so this would lead into them going over to the Todoroki residence. It's been about nearly 6 months, I would say, after they signed the contract with Endeavor, and Izuku and Shota would go and they would have their first interaction. Shota would see Izuku, and Izuku would see Shota, and they would introduce themselves to each other, and they basically, I mean, they're like 5.5, so they'd just be told to go play in another room while the parents talk business. Rei has been recovering at this point, and although she still looks tired and dragged, she's not mentally unstable anymore. She's mentally stable, but she's still recovering. But she is well enough to, talk about everything. The older 2 siblings of the Todoroki family are obviously just listening outside the door, just picking up on any information, and they hear about the arranged marriage, which they decide they'll tell that Shota will find out eventually anyways, so they'll just keep this to themselves, and they'll scold their father later about it. After this, Izuku, after about probably like a couple hours or so, Izuku would have to leave, and as they were leaving, Hizashi would say, "Did you have fun, Izuku?" And he would say, "Yeah, she has a really cool quirk, and she's really talented at drawing too. And she also likes this thing called soba. She made some for me, and it was really good. Can we go have some for dinner, Dad?" And he's like, "Okay, son, let's go have some soba." So around a year would pass. Frequent meetings between Izuku and Shota to get them closer would obviously happen, and they would just basically be playing together, and they would become pretty close friends. Obviously, this would be Shota's first friend in her lifetime, but this would be a really good chance for Izuku to get close to her and become good friends with her. And since Izuku knows what having friends is like, it's not like 2 introverts that don't know what friends are. It's much easier for them to, for Izuku to call Shota his friend than Shota to call Izuku her friend. But eventually over time, she'll learn what friendship is, and yada yada yada. They'll become good friends. Possibly even best friends. Because they'll have because they'll be like meeting really frequently, like almost every weekend, Saturday, Sunday, probably, in the afternoons. And this would get more and more frequent. They would go more and more days per week just to, kind of get it, although I think it would start mellowing out after around 3 years pass, and it would just be weekends that they would see each other, but it would be every weekend. There'd be no breaks. And around the age of Izuku being 11 years old, he gets some horrible news. The Midoriya family gets horrible news. Hizashi Midoriya has been shot to death after trying to save a woman from a gang of really powerful Quirk gang members, basically. He was nearly killed by their quirks, and then they just whipped out a bunch of guns and just fucking shot him to death. So yeah, R.I.P. Hizashi. He was pretty powerful, and he did manage to take out literally 85% of them, but it's just there were probably about 20-25 guys, and he's no pro hero. So literally what he was doing was illegal, but it was kind of like self-defense in a sense, although he did rush at them. So it would be kind of iffy, but then again, they were trying to kidnap a woman. So the woman, his death wasn't in vain. The woman did escape, and and the thug members were all rounded up by the pro heroes in the area, and Hisashi was actually considered a hero. And the family was compensated with like a small amount of money, but money wasn't really what they needed, what they cared about, because, you know, they were already getting money from the Todoroki family, so it wouldn't really matter to them, the money, but Inko would just be like shattered. She would just, Izuku most days would find her either curled up in her bed or curled up on the couch watching TV, and eventually this would turn Inko from the tall and slender person to the more short and more bulky person that we see when Izuku is older. Now, before we do that giant time skip, we are going to have to detail some of Izuku and Shota's interactions. So, their most important interactions would be ones that take place at certain points in their lives. Obviously, the first meeting was really important, but obviously there's a point in every friendship, if it's a friendship that lasts from elementary school into middle school, which is how hormones affect your body. Now, I had a friend that was a girl, and I was a guy, and when hormones would hit our body, we didn't, become a couple. There wasn't any attraction towards us. It's just, it changes the dynamic. Hormones will always, and puberty will change the dynamic of any friendship, any relationships. Hell, it'll change the relationship with your parents that you have. It changes everything because it's literally morphing you into an actual adult. And from that childish state that you can't be a child anymore, because you learn so much stuff in middle school. You learn cuss words, you learn all about other things. So yeah. But that would definitely be a big turning point in their relationship. But nothing would really come as of note during that time other than an unspoken attraction between the two. Now, as I said, it isn't guaranteed to happen, but it does happen around 45% of the time with girl and boy going through puberty together as friends. It is pretty common for this to happen. Now, those relationships more than likely will not last, but at the end of their second year of middle school, they are definitely both crushing on each other hard. And the older siblings of the Todoroki family can see this. Inko, obviously being a sad bundle of just mess, would not see this, but she's getting better over time because Rei and Mitsuki, Bakugo's mom basically, would be comforting her. Or should I say Katsuki's mom, because she's Bakugo, but whatever. But yeah, Bakugo's mom, Mitsuki, and Rei would both be comforting her, as well as... Oh god. Hold up. Let me search up the name of Todoroki's sister real quick. Because I accidentally forgot her name, and that's not fun. Fuck it, whatever. So Todoroki's sister, so yeah, Todoroki's sister would also be helping with Inko's recovery, but obviously this is going to take a lot of time, and Inko is really, really hurting. And by the end of their third year of middle school, because there's 4 years in middle school in Japan, so for elementary, here and over there, it's the same. They call it primary school, but, whatever. For middle school or junior high, they have 4 years, unlike us, who have 3 years in middle school. And then they have three years of high school, while we have 4. So they basically have their 9th grade, which is technically considered junior high or middle school. Which is actually the way with some middle schools today. But they're private schools. Public schools follow the 6-3-4 method. And I think that's the way for all, at least for the state that I live in, that's for all schools. Like, no matter what region you're in, like what district, it's for all schools in my state. But by the end of year 3, as I was saying, eventually Izuku would say something. He would actually gather up the courage to actually say something to Shota, and they would talk about, because they would obviously, as another big point in the relationship would be them finding out that they're destined to get married. This would come from Ray, because Inko is too, a ball of depression. It wouldn't come good because Endeavor, although it has been a while, still, it would be better to come from Ray. So it comes from Ray and Todoroki's sister, and Todoroki's brother, or, Shota's brother, and they would sit down Izuku and Shota, and they would tell them about this. Both of them, this being halfway through their year 2 of junior high, they would blush and look away. The Ray thinking, the older brother, sorry, not Ray, but Todoroki's older brother would think nothing of this, but the mom and the sister would definitely notice that something has already been going on between the two, and would just smile to themselves. After this, the marriage is actually set for a couple of months after their graduation of not high school, but actually junior high. The marriage would be set for, as I said, 2 months afterwards, or the wedding, not the marriage, but the wedding would be set 2 months afterwards. And so, basically, to make it sort of like kind of romantic, Izuku would be told about this and would be given a ring and told to ask Todoroki or Shota to marry him sometime before the wedding, obviously. But Izuku decides, I'm going to, actually at least go on one date with her before that happens. And by the middle of their 4th year, he actually gets the courage to ask Shota out on a date. And now we're going to get in detailed scene. I know I have a lot of explaining in big chunks and then really focused on one scene, which I've commented on in my other videos, which saying that I don't really like that. But I think it's good not to have too many really detailed scenes, because I'm not here to give you the entire rundown of how this would go in a manga/anime format, or a novel format. I'm just trying to give you guys a good story, okay? I'm not trying to freaking read you an entire fucking book. But besides that, scene starts. So, Izuku would walk up to Todoroki, who is just sitting there waiting. They chose a meeting spot at a park, and Todoroki would be in, not a dress, but just nice clothes. They're still casual, but they're a little nicer. Izuku would have come in a button-up, not a button-up, just a polo, obviously not a t-shirt, but a polo and just jeans, because obviously it's a date, but they're not trying to be super fancy. They're not going to a super fancy restaurant. They just decide to walk around the park for a bit and then go to a cafe. So they would walk around the park for about a little bit, talking about random things and talking about life, how their lives are gonna go. Izuku would start blushing heavily, and so would Shota. When either of them brings up the fact about a marriage, they can't believe it. And Todoroki, or Shota, actually doesn't know that Izuku likes her, because even though he did ask her out on a date, this might just be him trying to start a romantic relationship. So she doesn't actually think that Izuku has feelings back for her, but that he's just trying to make this easier for her so that it actually feels like they're forming a relationship romantically before they get married, even though they know they're just gonna get married. But as I said, she actually doesn't know that Izuku does like her, and Izuku kind of feels the same way, but obviously with different details. He doesn't know if Todoroki really likes him, and so he's like, God, I just wish this wasn't so awkward, basically. But honestly, I couldn't imagine being in that kind of situation. To be honest with you, like, be nice and all, like, especially if the girls I get married to was hot, but like without interest, bro, that marriage is just gonna fall apart in like 2 years. Like, if there was really no attraction between the two and they just were forced to get married, it'd be like canon Endeavor and Ray. They'd have children and then they'd just fall the fuck apart. Like a lot of marriages in America. Tells you something about our country, to be honest. You're not here to hear me rant about the social state of America. You're here to listen to a what if. So let's get right back into the scene. Izuku would say, "Hey, Todoroki? Come on, Izuku. Call me Shota, okay? You always do that. You always call me Todoroki. Even when I'm around my family. You call my dad Endeavor. You call my mom, my sister, and my brother all by first name. Well, you call my mom Miss Todoroki, but you call my brother and sister by first name. But you call me Todoroki. Why? Sorry, it's just a habit, I guess. I guess you're right. I know you're close to that Kachan kid, or Katsuki Bakugo, from school, right? We're not exactly close. We are friends, but, you know, you're a much better friend than he is. He's kind of an asshole, to be honest. Izuku? What? I've never heard you cuss before. That's a first. They would chuckle and continue to walk through the park, before eventually going to the cat cafe, sitting down, having a nice little dinner, I guess, before leaving and going back into the park, where they would stand on a moonlit bridge, which Izuku had planned perfectly, and he would say, "All right, I did it, and, well, it's only a little bit of time before we get married, so might as well." He would walk over to Shota, grabbing her hand. Both of them would instantly turn as red as tomatoes and walk away, and Izuku would basically awkwardly, sort of like semi-yell, "Hey, Shota, I have a question." Shota would reply, "What is it, Izuku?" Izuku would take the case with the ring out of his pocket and say, "I know I'm not dressed the best for this, but what? Shota Todoroki?" He would get down on one knee and he would take her left hand in his right hand, and with his left hand he would open the small container and he would say, Will you marry me?" Todoroki would instantly just look away, completely flustered, like she can't speak. She literally, like, if she tried to speak, it would come out as some like awkward hyena yell. She was literally so nervous and so, like, her heart was just clenching so hard that she actually thought she was going to die from a heart attack. Like, she started like slightly hyperventilating. Izuku would say, "I know this is kind of forced. After all, we are being forced. But I'd be more than happy to spend the rest of my life with you. I love you, Shota. And I know you may not feel the same, and I know you may feel forced, but please, we're friends, right? We can try and make this work." Izuku, she would say, barely managing to get only his just name out. And he would say, "Yeah, what is it?" But Todoroki couldn't respond anymore, and the situation would be too much for her, and she would collapse, fainting, just from, pure embarrassment and pure emotion. Izuku would start freaking out, and he would swiftly pick her up bridal style, putting the ring and the case back into his pocket, and running off back to the Todoroki residence. He would plop her on the he would knock on the door with his foot, and Todoroki's or Shota's brother would open the door. He would run in and place her on the couch, running into the kitchen, taking out a towel and placing it on Shota's forehead. Todoroki's brother would say, "Well, what did you two do? How did she get so exhausted?" "No, seriously, what did you do to her?" "I didn't do nothing, I swear. But she just... well, I did it. I asked her the question." "Hey, props. It was only one date, but at least you actually went on a date before you got where you asked her. Did she give you an answer?" "No. I told her that I did have feelings for her, but she just said my name and then passed out." "Okay, look, I may not have noticed it at first, but even I'm not as dumb as you two. Seriously, how in the world are you two this dense? It's plainly obviously that you have feelings for each other. And that'll definitely help with you two getting married and all. You won't end up like how the beginning of my mom and dad's relationships were. Seems like your family coming into our life made our dad a whole lot better. I mean, I actually kind of like hanging out with him, instead of regretting ever seeing his face. And he's become a pretty admirable hero now, not just being dark and brooding, but actually being sort of outgoing, kind of like All Might in a sense." Izuku would smile and say, "Oh, well, don't give me too much credit. After all, we were just stuck for money. I know from the talks that you, not you, but your parents had with Bakugo's mom and dad." "Oh, I see. Well, just because you did it, just because you were stuck with money, it doesn't mean that we don't appreciate you. We do. Izuku, I'm completely fine with you being my younger brother. In fact, I'd love to have you as a younger brother to me. If there's anybody I want her to marry, it would be you. I just don't know if my other sister is ever gonna get a man." Which then Todoroki's older sister would whip around the corner, listening to the conversation, and just smash Todoroki's brother over the head, saying, "You take that back, you jerk." But then she would look up and she would say, "So you popped a big question, huh? Just wait for her to wake up. She was probably just too embarrassed and too full of stress and emotion to say anything." So this would eventually lead to the obviously the marriage and the wedding, which would have a giant wedding reception, and multiple heroes would actually be there, multiple pro heroes, such as the ninja hero, I can't remember his name, Mirko, Hawks, hell, even All Might would attend, and he would congratulate the couple. Izuku's mom is sort of like how Rei is at this point. She's constantly looking tired, but she's not just a ball of depression anymore. But she is still sweet, short, the shorter one now, the one that we saw in when Izuku was like 13, 14. Izuku would be around 15 years old at this point, and so would Shota, and they would eventually, as I said, the wedding would end, and they would be officially married. Now, I know that may seem weird, but I believe in the future, especially with something like this, that, especially with Japan's problem with population, I do believe that they would try and make the marriage ages younger and younger. Now, it may not be 15 exactly, but, Endeavor is Endeavor. He's the number 2 hero, and he can bend the rules just a little bit. Like, he'll find a way. And so eventually, this would lead into them having a little discussion. So it would be a couple of days after the wedding, and normally there would be like a honeymoon phase. In fact, the night of the wedding, you're supposed to, But that doesn't happen because they actually have a talk that night. They're both just sitting in a room. They're obviously next to each other. They've gotten a lot closer over the 2 months, and she's laying on his shoulder. Their embarrassment is still there, but it's getting better over time, but it's still not the best. They're still pretty embarrassed to do anything even semi-lovey-dovey. They literally, their first kiss was at the wedding, because, you may now kiss the bride, yada yada. But, that would basically lead into them having this discussion, which would be basically, they're like, you know what, yeah, we should probably not get it on until after high school, right? Yeah. So they come to the mutual decision to not have any of the good, like the honeymoon, I guess you could say, until after graduating high school and after becoming heroes. But they would still be married, and they would still basically act like, not like a married couple, obviously, but they're technically married, but they would more act like a couple that's dating. And this would lead us into them actually, going to UA high school. So, obviously, Shota, being the daughter of the number 2 hero, would get into UA based on recommendation, and Izuku being her husband, would be accepted as well, because he's technically part of the Todoroki family. He would actually become Izuku Todoroki instead of Shota becoming Shota Midoriya, because obviously there was some points in history where the more important family would actually get the last name, even if the more important family was the family of the daughter. So I think that's kind of how it would go this time. But besides that, they would obviously get into UA, no problems at all. They don't have to take the entrance exam, and everybody, as in canon, would get into the class, so we don't have to retcon anybody this time. Finally, I don't have to just kick Boot Mineta out of 1A like I have to do every other time. And as I said, I kind of like Mineta. Airy shit. Airy was kind of weird. The Airy thing was kind of weird, but no, it wasn't kind of weird. It was weird, like completely weird. Just know that I hated his character for that scene. But yeah. But besides that, it's really funny. It is funny. Yeah, sure. It's sexual and he's a douchebag, but I mean. You gotta respect it, man. At least he's going after his goals. But eventually this would lead into them having, meeting people. So eventually, obviously, they wouldn't know anybody. They would just, because since they wouldn't meet anybody at the entrance exam, because they don't go to the entrance exam. So they would have to meet everybody on the first day of school. And obviously, Midoriya or Izuku, would be happy to see Bakugo. And Bakugo, even though Izuku kind of did call him an a-hole, Bakugo, he's an a-hole to, quirkless people. And since Izuku always had this, super powerful quirk and would constantly just body Bakugo, Bakugo basically knows his place, quote-unquote. So instead of, him being, instead of Bakugo having Izuku as his lackey, Bakugo would just basically respect Izuku to, get him back, to be honest. And because of this, Izuku would have a much closer relationship with Bakugo, and they would be much closer and much better friends, actually. They would actually be proper best friends, instead of just having that weird relationship that they had in the actual canon. But they still have their rivalry, and Bakugo really does want to one day become strong enough to beat Izuku. But he, nor Izuku, sees that happening anytime soon. And this is actually Shota's first time meeting Bakugo. And so their conversation would be a little normal. It'd be quite normal introduction until she would say the words, "I'm Izuku's wife." And everybody in the general vicinity, meaning the entire class, well, meaning basically like everybody like close around would be questioning it, and Bakugo would say, "What the hell do you mean his wife?" And then everybody in the class would turn around and be like, "Yo, what the hell's going on?" They would all crowd, and Izuku would be embarrassed, but Shota would keep her calm and say, "Our parents agreed to have a quirk marriage ever since we were little, and we got married so since there was like a 10-month period between the end of middle school and the beginning of high school, they would they basically have been married for 8 months now, and they would show their rings off to everybody, and everybody would be like, "Whoa, that's cool, but like, dang, you guys got married early." And Mineta would be like, Mineta and Kaminari would pull Izuku off to the side, like, "God damn, man, you pulled a girl that hot when you were this young? Dude, what the hell?" But yeah, besides that, interactions would be a little weird and a little off, because obviously they have a married couple in their class, and they're like, "Whoa, that's just weird." Like, imagine, like, you're just in high school, like, you're in, like, okay, so I guess it would be 10th grade, technically. So you're in 10th grade, and first day of school, you meet these two people that are literally married. Yeah, it'd be just slightly off, just slightly weird. But everybody does accept it, and they're like, yeah, it's whatever. It doesn't really matter. Like, we're not gonna treat you bad because of it. I mean, it wasn't even your kind of choice, and the fact that you fell in love is just makes it super sweet. And all the girls would obviously be like, "We're gonna support you, Shota," and all of the like Baku squad basically would be like, "Oh hell yeah, dude, we're gonna help you out." Now obviously they're not the Baku squad yet, but eventually over time they're just gonna become the Baku squad. Izuku and Shota being married aren't gonna change the fact that they're gonna become the Baku squad. And Izuku would become friends with Uraraka and Ida pretty quickly. Before that, let's get so basic training would happen. The basic training with like Aizawa. I think someone like Hagakure would probably come in last place, but obviously she would be spared because Aizawa would be like, "Yeah, okay, yeah, I was just fucking with you. Calm down." And Izuku and Shota would actually have quite the sweet moment a little afterwards. So obviously we're going to go into obviously go from God view to go from macro view to micro view. And the scenes start with basically Izuku is walking with Todoroki, and they're holding hands, and it's not as embarrassing. Obviously it's been nearly a year since they started technically like quote unquote dating. It's been 8 months since they've been married, so everything's gotten much less embarrassing, and they're actually just smiling with like tiny blushes on their faces while doing this. And Shota would say, "Hey, Izuku, yeah, what is it, Shota? Can we try what we did at the wedding?" "Well, what are you talking about? What, you want to dance? Because you saw how horrible I was at that." "No, God, no, I messed you up more than anything. I'm pretty sure I have 2 left feet." They would start to laugh, and she would say, "No, I mean, during the actual wedding." "Stand still? I don't get what you mean." "No. You mean the He would instantly turn red. The kiss? Yeah, that's what I want. So, can we try it? Just another time. You know, one more time. We don't have to do it. You know, I mean, if you don't want to, you don't have to. You just, please. Oh, okay. Yeah. Todoroki would lean her head up, closing her eyes, ready for Izuku to kiss her, and Izuku would kiss her on the forehead, and she would say, "You absolute dumbass. Come here, you little idiot." She'd grab him by the tie, pull him in, and kiss him directly on the lips. And she would say, or Izuku would say, "Oh, that was amazing. You need to do that more often." And she would say, "Yeah, you really do." Before they would interlock hands again and walk off to go into the personal limousine that would take them back to the Todoroki residence. Since Inko basically has been recovering at the Todoroki residence, and Izuku, now that she's officially married, it never was like, "Hey, why not?" And so they did. Moved in with the Todoroki family after the wedding. So Izuku and Shota would actually have a lot of personal training. Like they've been personally training for years upon end. Like they started training at age 8, I believe, together. And so Izuku would have near complete mastery over his wind and water powers. His earth powers are a little more they need a little more refining and a little more practice, and obviously he needs practice with everything because, you know, although he's been training, he doesn't really know like how to practically use them in like certain situations. He just knows how to use them to use basic attacks, and he does know basic martial arts as well as like basic disarming arts, kind of like what Uraraka learned at the Gunhead's training. Shota would obviously be the same, although she would actually have complete like the mastery that Izuku has over his wind and water, over her ice, and her fire would need more refining, kind of like Izuku's earth powers. But they would still be incredibly powerful, and Shota would actually be able to like direct her ice and even manipulate it into shapes instead of just iceberg or icicles. She could even form icicles mid-air and then launch them like projectiles. And Izuku, he could basically, if you've ever seen JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 2, he can do what Wamu does if he truly charges up his wind powers to the absolute max. And yeah, basically he can do the Divine Sandstorm, where wind spins around both his arms at such a high speed, as well as like small like rocks, like sharp rocks and dust particles being brought into it. It would cut his arms and damage his arms, but it would do so much more damage to his opponent. Basically like cutting them like to shreds. Now obviously it wouldn't be as powerful as Wamu's because it wouldn't be like he's trying to be a hero, he's not trying to kill people. Not all the time at least. Like you fuck with Shota, you're probably gonna get killed, but that's besides the point. So eventually this would lead into the USJ. Now the USJ would go actually per normal. I don't for the beginning parts, but then the difference would happen when Izuku gets to the place where Todoroki, Bakugo, or Shota, Bakugo, and Kirishima are staring down the Nomu. Now, Ida would actually have arrived late. He actually wouldn't have gotten to All Might. Basically, I guess you would call it quote-unquote in time. So now it's, so Ida's actually taking a lot longer than in canon. We don't know why, he just is. No one knows. It's the fact that Ida got lost. But, you know, he's having to ask for directions, and it won't take him much longer, but it'll probably delay All Might by about 15 minutes later than canon. But in this 15 minutes, the fodder villains are absolutely, as in their name, fodderized by everybody in UA. And all the basic Nomu, like the ones that Ojiro fights, obviously get bodied by people like Ojiro and Tokuyami. And the other Nomu, like the really good, strong Nomu, would basically be fought off by Bakugo, Todoroki, Kirishima, and Izuku. They would all try their best, but it would take the full power of Izuku and Shota's ice and wind powers to basically finish the thing off for good. Izuku would create so much air around himself, like he would pull Shota close to him and then wrap so much air around himself that would basically be a tornado around himself before launching that at the Nomu. The Nomu would be encased, trying its best to even just stand still and not get completely blown away, but then Todoroki would summon a bunch of ice spikes and just swirl them around into the place, and this would cause their one special move. This is the only special move that they have at the moment, which is Izuku and Shota would both shout at the same time, "Special move, Gale Force Hailstorm!" before the ice spikes would slam into the Nomu and then eventually shatter it apart with the brain, which would actually kill it. Yes, the thing can't regenerate its own brain, which is the thing that runs all the quirks. But just to make sure, because they had seen the regenerative powers, Todoroki uses her, basically her flames, in how, kind of like how Dabi uses his flames, or how Endeavor, condensed his flames to like the blue flame, and would just burn the thing to like nothing, like just incinerate it. So with the villains, with all the fodderized villains, fodder villains of the Nomu defeated, Shigaraki and Kurogiri would just go away, with All Might arriving just in time to see Shigaraki and Kurogiri leaving, him saying, "Damn it, I was too late," but then realizing that the only buddy who was seriously hurt was Aizawa, and he wasn't even dead. And then he's told the whole story, like Kirishima. Bakugo would obviously help in telling that story. But there wouldn't be, much to tell. Obviously, they would just say that Izuku and Shota would basically bodied the Nomu, which All Might would be pretty impressed at, seeing as how it had a really good regenerative quirk, or at least from what they could tell, it had a really good regenerative quirk, and the thing seemed to be pretty strong since it could just pound Aizawa into the ground even after having its quirks erased. But besides all of that, there's not anything left for me to cover in this part. Part 1 of What If Deku Was in a Quirk Marriage. I hope you guys enjoyed. This was a little more fanfiction-y, obviously, than some of my other what ifs. But I kind of like this idea, but I may not make this to a full series. If we can get this video to 10 likes, I guess, I'll make a part 2 before this upcoming Saturday. But besides that, I hope you guys have enjoyed this, and obviously it's into the video. Gotta do the announcements. Check out my boy Lucid Okage, Kira Jim. Oh god, who else? Yeah, Kira Jim, Lucid Okage, Izukage, and Red Demon of the Leaf. Links will be in the description. Check out some other playlists. There'll also be some links in the description, or if you're on computer or some other device where the actual ending things pop up. I know if you're on the website on your phone, it doesn't pop up, but if you're on something where the notifications at the end of the video do pop up, you'll get a playlist, a video that's recommended from my channel, and the subscribing thing. Oh, and yeah, that's also a good thing. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, like the video. You just clicking on the video gives me watch time, which is amazing. And I don't know if my videos have ads or not. I don't think they do. I don't think they're allowed to if you don't want to have monetization, so I don't know. But comment in the comment in the comments down below what you want to see, what you want me to do next. If I like your idea, I'll do it. If I don't necessarily like the idea, I'll tell you. I'm probably not going to do that. And if I'm iffy about it, I might say maybe. But this is one that I saw from actually a guy named Anime, or a YouTuber named Anime Outlet. I think a lot of you might know him. I was actually compared to him once, which is pretty insane with how many subscribers he has compared to the amount of subscribers I have. But with that out of the way, that takes away all my announcements and all of my reminders. So, oh wait, nope, there is one more announcement. Road to 500, gang. Get to 500 and you will get an hour-long special. Yes, that's the special project that I had in store. You will get an hour-long special, but don't tell anyone. But you guys are gonna get something very special. Now, I said this in my last video, but that hour-long special will actually be What If Sasuke Died. I think I will cover the entirety of that What If. That will be just a one-shot. But it will obviously be the full story of Naruto. But it's just, even if it lasts more than an hour, hell, if it lasts 2 hours, I don't care. I'm just gonna tell the story in its entirety, which won't take, like, yeah, sure, if I record for 2 hours, that's gonna be a hell of a lot to edit, but, you know, it's fine. I'm totally not gonna just die after an hour of recording. God damn it. But with that out of the way, I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.